Okay, it's 6:30, and now it is time for the Murray City Municipal Council meeting. And we're actually in the council chambers, and I can see people, and I can see faces. This is awesome. It's also kind of strange. So if I get a little confused, that's because it's been a long time. Anyway, welcome again. Let's see. First of all, let's see, where are we at? Oh, we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance, and I've asked Rosalba Dominguez. Oh, also, like I said, I may be a little confused at first, but also we have all members of the council present. So, and Mayor and GL. And so anyway, again, welcome. And we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Rosalba Dominguez, council member, has said she would do it for us. Thank you, Rosalba.
Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, that's right. Also, if you would please turn off your cell phones, and I would appreciate that. Let's see. Also, the first thing we've got is approval of minutes. We have two sets of minutes, the one from council meeting of June 11th, 2021, and council meeting for June 15th. 2021. Are there any changes or questions about these meeting minutes? Okay, I would be happy to take them together if there is.
Let me just ask, are those dates correct? June 11th?
June 11th and June 15th?
Oh, June 1st. Okay, yeah. I was just going to say, I know we don't meet on Friday night, so June 1st.
All right.
Oh. Sometimes you don't dare say anything right at first because you're thinking.
Thank you. Good catch.
Okay. If there's
Okay, I would appreciate a motion.
I'll do that. I'll move that we approve the minutes from June 1st, 2021, and council meeting June 15th, 2021.
I will second that.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay. All right, we have no special recognition this time. And now we'll go to citizen comments. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Step to the microphone, state your name and city of residence, and fill out the required form that Jennifer up here will give you. This is not the time to comment on either of the public hearings. This time is for citizen comments only. Written comments received prior to the meeting have already been forwarded to the council members. Okay. Are there any comments now that we can make them in person? Okay, we'll close this part and go to the consent agenda. And the first is to consider confirmation of the mayor's appointment of Kimberly Bird to the Murray City Parks and Recreation Advisory Board for a 3-year term beginning June 6th, 2021 to expire January 1st, 2024. Mayor Camp presenting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hope you've had the opportunity to look at Kimberly's resume and credentials. One of the things that we really liked about Kimberly, there were a number of things we liked, but something that really stood out to us was the fact that she's a power user of our parks. She has 4 young boys that are rambunctious, and having someone with that kind of experience on our Parks Advisory Board gives us a really good perspective. So I power user is my term, not hers, but I think that probably describes Anyway, a very, very good mix of education and experience, and so I ask you to approve this appointment. And Kimberly is here tonight, and Kimberly, if you'd like to stand or wave or.
Okay.
So if you have any, unless you have any questions, I'll ask you to approve the appointment.
All right. If there aren't any questions, I would accept a motion.
I'll make a motion that we confirm Kimberly Bird to the Murray City Parks and Recreation Advisory Board for a 3-year term beginning July 6, 2021 to expire January 1st, 2024.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right. And would you take the roll, Brooke?
Mr. House?
Aye.
Ms. Martinez?
Aye.
Mr. Cox?
Aye.
Mr. Mingus?
Aye.
Ms. Turner?
Aye.
Madam Chair, if I could also just comment, I failed to mention that this is actually to fill the unexpired term of Mindy Canova, who was unable to finish her term. She just got started and had to step down. So this is not quite a full term.
All right. Well, Kimberly, thank you so much for your willingness to serve. We really appreciate it. It's great to meet you. All right. Now we go to the public hearings portion of our council meeting. This will be staff and sponsor presentations and public comment prior to the council action on the following matters. So we'll go with number 1, which is to consider a land use ordinance amending sections 17.92.090, 17.96.090, 17.100.090, 17104, 090, 17108, 090, 17112, 090, 17116, 060, 17120, 060, and 17124, 060, and 17128, 0660 of the Murray City Municipal Code relating to the height of residential zone accessory structures.
Now, what was that called? Well, can you read those again?
No, but you may have to. Jared Hall is presenting. Hi, Jared.
Thank you. Hi. And it is not as bad as it sounds, really.
Oh, my
I'm just
goodness.
gonna put you all at ease. So it really is, this is a text amendment request that came from Mr. Brad Lambert about accessory structures. An accessory structure in residential zones, and we've included all those references from the land use code that Diane just read are sections of the code. And it applies to a whole bunch of them because we have multiple single-family zones and multiple family zones that have allowances for accessory structures that are all very similar. And so we're trying to propose an amendment for all of them at the same time. An accessory structure in a rear yard is anything from a shed to a swimming pool to a garage. In the case of Mr. Lambert, the accessory structure was a garage that he was building when he came up against a piece of our code, and he asked for us to look at it and see if we would agree with the text amendment. So let me just run through that really quickly. Those are the zones given as zones instead of as the sections that Diane read out. Those are all those that are impacted. The proposed amendment has to do with the height only. This does not, and this is the first point I wanted to make, this does not affect the coverage, the size that we would allow. We limit accessory structures to cover no more than 25% of a rear yard area. So you take that area that's someone's backyard, and the combination of all of their accessory structures, sheds and garages and everything else, can't cover more than 25%. That's not affected by this. It doesn't have an impact on the setbacks that are required. It has to be a certain distance behind the home, a certain distance from anyone else's home, et cetera. This is strictly for the height. The existing language limits the height in two ways. If the height of your home is 16 feet or more, then you can have 20 feet in height. But if you're less than 16 feet, or 16 feet or less, you're limited to 16 feet for the height if you're less than 20 feet, you're limited to 16 feet for the height of the accessory structures. And Mr. Lambert's proposed amendment was to change that to just be 20 feet overall in height regardless. We had made a change as staff about a year ago, a little more than a year ago, to this to this code that created this existing language. Prior to that, your accessory structure could never be higher than your house on the same lot. Regardless of what the height of your house was, it could never be taller. And 20 feet is still the cap. So 20 feet has always been allowed for every home that was at least 20 feet tall. We toyed around with the idea of proposing just a 20-foot overall height at the time. We did not. We came back with this sort of more complicated regulation, and that was passed. We felt like in reviewing Mr. Lambert's situation and other situations in the city, it made sense just to have a straightforward height allowance of 20 feet. One thing to remember that is that in Murray, we measure to the peak of the roof, the tallest point. A lot of cities do a midpoint of the pitch, et cetera. We don't do that. We measure straight to the tallest point. So 20 feet is the overall height, regardless of the pitch of that roof. We are recommending approval of that change, as it says right there, proposed, just to 20 feet. We did do some research looking at other cities, and there's a lot of regulations. They're all over the map, really. Lots of different ways of measuring, lots of different allowances, et cetera. But 20 feet doesn't feel, after we looked at the different codes, 20 feet did not feel, because of the way we measure that height, didn't feel out of proportion with other codes, or out of proportion with this, with our needs in Murray. It creates a situation where homeowners have better access to using their property, and for larger things like RVs and campers and things that need to be put inside. So we felt like it was a good trade-off. Didn't give up too much in height, but did allow a little bit of increase. We did hold a public hearing with the Planning Commission. We did not receive any public comments at that time, and the Planning Commission did vote 7-0 to forward a recommendation of approval to the council. And staff is still forwarding our approval recommendation as well. We did make several findings, as I mentioned. We felt like it was consistent with our residential zoning. It was consistent within the range of other allowances within the valley along the Wasatch Front. We didn't feel like it was out of the margins with what we normally do, and we are recommending that you approve it. You have any questions for staff at this point?
Questions for staff at this point?
I do.
Go ahead.
How many of these applications do you get
Well,
on a yearly
you
basis
mean applications for an accessory structure, for a building
for
code,
20-foot
for 20-foot
high
accessory structures?
accessory structure?
I wouldn't be able to tell you how many. A lot.
A lot?
Most homes have that height. A lot of homes are 25 or 30 feet tall. Newer homes are going to be taller.
Mm-hmm.
Where you're going to see this particular regulation have an impact is not really in newer parts of the city where the homes are usually taller than that, or at that 20 feet. You're going to see it in the older sections of the city sections that were built during the 50s and 60s, where they might have 13, 14, 15-foot heights. I think, and Mr. Lambert could tell me if I'm wrong, but I think his overall height was 14 feet or something like that, or 15 and a half. So he's just a few feet shy of being able to do the 20 feet. So you'll see a bigger impact in those older neighborhoods, but not in the newer neighborhoods. You usually see the 20-foot height available. And accessory structures are very common, and they're getting taller, frankly, as time goes by. The reason that we made the change or proposed the change that the council approved about a year ago was because so many homes were limited in height to where you couldn't build taller than the home, and there'd be a 13 or 14-foot home, and you couldn't use a kit from Costco to put a shed in your backyard because it was just a little taller than that, and the rule that we had didn't really work. So we made that adjustment, and we feel like at this time it's probably just appropriate to go all the way to the 20.
So I have a concern that the structure is already built, and if we don't approve it tonight, then what happens?
Well, for example, in Mr. Lambert's particular case, in that case, he actually has a second permit pending that would extend the height of his roof with dormers to make it a taller home, and he'd be able to
Okay.
20-foot height. But that notwithstanding, we felt like, and that was always a solution that was available. But looking at the code language and considering that we had wanted to just go to 20 back a year ago or so, we felt like it was appropriate, a good moment to bring it forward since it had a citizen applicant instead of just us as staff.
Okay. And just kind of the aesthetics of the neighborhood. I mean, we could increase the size of the property itself, right?
Well,
Is that in code now? If he wanted to have another level built on his
sure.
property?
You can go up to 35 feet with a home. Exactly.
Okay.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, that's what I'm. And so let's
It
just
doesn't
say,
increase that. It
just in what's in the code now, he increased his property height. Could he then add a 20-foot structure if that was the case? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
As a backup, what's going to happen?
Exactly.
Okay.
20 feet is what the existing code allows, as long as your home is at least 20 feet.
Yeah, because I know the neighbors, I think, is 16 feet at 5192, right?
I'm not sure.
Do you know? Okay. It's a little bit shorter than the structure that's there
Sure.
now. So I was just understanding
Yeah.
the height, and why after the fact we're getting this recommendation.
Well, yeah. So the height of the garage, we had understood that the height of the home was tall enough to allow the height of the garage at 20 feet, or it's actually at like 18 something, or correct me if I'm wrong, but we had understood that the height of the home would have allowed the height of the accessory structure. That was not the case. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
There are a lot of homes in my area that are older homes, and they're flat roofed.
Yeah.
And it really curtails what they can do for a garage. And the added expense to put another roof on your house to get it high enough so you can do a garage is probably astronomical. So I think this is a good compromise.
Yeah, and I like that it's not changing the skyline of any neighborhood. There are already the different heights of the houses and the different heights of garages. It's just giving that equal opportunity to anyone to build a garage or a shed without going through that extra appeal process.
I guess my biggest concern is, once we say you can build a 20-foot garage, in some areas you're going to obstruct a view because it's a massive, it's really tall.
Yeah.
It is really, really tall. And it obstructs your neighbors' views, it obstructs the whole community, and it really puts a damper on to the surrounding areas. And then you get, well, if this neighbor did it, now this neighbor is going to be able to do it. We're going to have these 20-foot structures all throughout Murray that are going to offset some of the property. And how do we address that?
Well, I think that's a good question. It's a good concern, and it's one that we've talked through as staff as well. These are not all of the. I mean, to begin with, 20-foot accessory structures like this are allowed all over the city as long as your home is at least that tall. And as I said, a lot of the homes that were developed in Murray were developed in the 80s and 90s and since, and they're all 25, 28, 30 feet tall to the pitches. So they're already allowed everywhere. So I don't. As we looked at the possibilities of it and the changes that it could entail, you're right. It can change some of the views that people have from their backyards. It can change some of that relationship, but it can change them at 16 feet already. And that difference didn't feel like enough for us to warrant or to outweigh the benefits that Councilman Cox is talking about to people's private use of their private property. It didn't feel like an egregious change to us.
Okay.
Anything
Thank you. Yes. Mr. Lambert, would you like to address the council? Okay, then we will continue on. All right, I will now open the public comment. Yes.
I'm Catherine Litchfield. I'm a design build professional since 1997. I've built a commercial building way over 20 feet down on 9th and 9th. So what I'm concerned about is this blanket ruling of 20 feet. What you don't understand, and Jared Hall says, we only measure to the pitch of the roof. If you say 20 feet's okay, you can have a box that's 20 feet high. You're not specifying any slopes, and you're not specifying any side heights. This room is 10 feet high. Twice this height of this room is what you're allowing 1 foot off the property line. 1 foot. The person that impacts the most is the neighbor. I myself have a 16-foot garage. When I moved in on one side of me, it was quite impactful. I thought, I'll overcome that. Mr. Lambert has built, and whether or not, this is not a personal issue, but this is between me and Murray City, a 20-foot structure with an 18-foot wall. My neighbors go in my backyard and they go, oh! It is impactful, 18 feet of a wall. I would like to welcome you to my backyard to feel the height of an 18-foot wall, 1 foot off the property line. Also, Jared Hall has quoted this list of all the cities in the valley and their 20-foot, he said there's a lot of 20-foot height structures that are permitted accessory dwellings. Not true. There is only one city, Lehigh, which permits a 24-foot high structure. The rest of them are 20 feet high only if you have at least 3 feet setback and it steps back 1 foot for every foot over 16 feet high. So that puts the garage in, or the shed, or whatever it is, in the back of the yard. Every city in our valley has taken great pains, and they're all outlined here to make modifications so that you don't come across a wall 20 feet high off your property. In the luxury neighborhoods in California, they literally calculate the shadow that the building casts. And the purpose of the zoning laws originally in New York City was to perpetuate light and air. So the difference between a 16-foot structure, a wall, and a 20-foot structure is 25% more sunlight, 25% more sky. Now imagine this. All your neighbors want to build great big garages. So 20 feet there, 20 feet there, 20 feet there. You've just had 25%, 75% more of your sky taken. I am urging moderation. I have some drawings.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Your 3 minutes are up.
Okay, I am urging moderation, and I would like to ask you to consider some other conditions, such as limiting the height of a wall. Mr. Lambert's structure wouldn't need to change at all. He has an 18-foot wall. I would urge that thing, and I want to make one last point, and that is, we're talking about RV garages, RVs. The largest vehicle that can go on a Utah road is 14 feet high by 8.5 feet by 45 feet long. That can fit in an engineered simple truss structure of 16 feet. You can fit the largest vehicle you're allowed to drive off your property in a structure, a garage that's 16 feet. The only reason why Mr. Lambert has gone higher, well, there's 2 reasons. If you want an asphalt roof, you have to slope it. That would take the height of the roof up to between 17 and 18 feet. That would make the side 16 feet, the same impact that's having now. Then the slope would go up to 18 feet, and you could have an asphalt shingle roof with a huge structure.
Okay, can you?
So I just don't think it's not necessary to have a structure that's 20 feet high. And Mr. Lambert has at least 2.5 to 3 feet space. He didn't need that. You don't need that. You don't need that for the largest vehicle on the planet. So I would like to urge moderation, and also a shed. If you want to take a 10 by 20 foot shed and have it go up twice as high as this roof, that's no shed. That's a huge building. And you're allowing it to have no setbacks except the 1 foot minimum. And Mr. Lambert was kind enough to put his structure 2 feet off. And I urge that all structures be at least 2 feet off,
Okay.
have a limit of 17 to 18 feet on the wall. Because
Thank you.
20-foot box is too big to put in our backyards. And it ruins our feel of our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, there is a form that we need to have you fill out and give it to Jennifer. If you would do that, thank you. Okay, do we have any more comments for this public hearing? All right. I will now close the public hearing and send it to the council for comment or a motion.
Yeah, I've got a comment. Jared, could you come up? Yeah. So in essence, with this with this change, You could still have a flat roof and your building could be 20 feet high or
Good.
19.6 with the,
That's correct. We don't prohibit flat roofs. But if you do a flat roof, you have to do a drain system, et cetera. It's not common to see them on garages like this. We could add language that would limit that or change that. We had not, and these are not things we didn't consider in looking at the code changes. The accessory structures that we typically see do not have flat roofs, and especially when they're 20 feet, because they're looking for that overall height and then a pitch on the roof to do exactly what Mrs. Litchfield was describing, to put an asphalt shingle roof on it and not have to do a roof drain system. There are other things to consider here too, just to be clear. A lot of accessory structures also, we do allow them 1 foot off of property lines. That's true. And I don't recommend that we make any changes to that. A lot of accessory structures are small. They're 65 square feet, they're 100 square feet, and they need to be put into corners where they can. Larger structures like this aren't usually able to get waivers from the easements that we require in side yards and rear yards because they're so large. Smaller structures usually can. A lot of times, one like Mr. Lambert's wouldn't be able to get the waiver to go in that side yard because it would need to be 5 or 7 feet off to not be in the easements for the public utilities. So we see lots of accessory structures that aren't 1 foot off. There are also building codes that come into play when you're within 5 feet of a property line. Now, they're not hard to meet when you're dealing with a building that's not an inhabited building, but they're still more expensive. So people, when they can, choose to put them about 5 feet off or 6 or 7 feet off for public utility easements. So if my concern is the worst case scenario, then yeah, 20-foot structures all around a backyard of some size, and they're all engineered for roof drains, et cetera, and they're all flat roofed. I just don't see that happening. I don't think the code needs to be written for it. That absolute worst case scenario. It's not likely to happen.
But it could happen.
It's always potential, yeah. And I mean, without getting into the entire substructure of the zoning code, we do not write for the worst case scenario. If you did, it would just say no anything anywhere, period. That would be your zoning code.
that'd make us a lot easier job here.
I mean, that's a gross oversimplification, obviously, but we were going for simplification of this, absolutely. So to take it from trying to measure the height of the house and worrying about, staff made this error because we didn't have an accurate measurement of the height of the house. That's how this happened in the first place and brought this issue to light. We don't want to try to rely on so much information to do something as simple as a backyard garage, when 99.9% of the time it is just not an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments from the council? All right, then I would appreciate a motion.
As I like the consistency and simplicity of the code, and I think it's an improvement and will help lots of residents do what they need to on their property. I will make the motion to consider a land use ordinance amending sections 17.92.090, 17.96.090, 17.100.090, 17.104.090, 17.108.090, 17.112.090, 17.116.060, 17.120.060, 17.124.060, and 17.128.060 of the Murray City Municipal Code relating to the height of residential zone accessory structures.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Is there a discussion on the motion?
Yes. I would just like to say that, and I wish we had time to see the actual structure itself, because it is a massive structure in somebody's backyard. And this could be for anybody. This could be for anyone that is in these zones, and really something to consider. And I know there's always a loop around. I feel like it's now coming to us to make a decision that should have been made on the front end. And it's pretty unfortunate that we're now having to do this on our end. So that's really where I'm at with this. We've talked about this before, about building a structure back there. And I thought it's a great idea. And then I saw it and I'm like, wow, this is huge. And so I just really wanted to say that because it can really change the whole dynamic of a neighborhood and in any of our neighborhoods, really. So thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay, Brooke, would you take the roll?
Aye.
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 Nay.
Aye. On our second public hearing is to consider an ordinance vacating a municipal utility easement located at approximately 20 East Winchester Street. Bruce Turner, welcome.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Can you hear me? So this is just a utility easement for a power line on a piece of property over on Winchester Street, about number 20 East, right where the big cell tower is, right by I-215. When the power line was built, it was built out of the easement, and they now want to subdivide this lot. So we just need to shift this utility easement over to where the power line actually is. And I think y'all have a map like we talked about in committee of the whole that shows you exactly where it needs to be shifted to. So we've worked with the property owner. Bryant from GL's office has talked to them extensively. We have an agreement in place that will let us, if we need to put a pole in the property on an emergency basis, we can do that as long as it doesn't stay there very long. They've been really great to work with. They've signed off on everything that we've proposed to them. So now we're just to you guys.
All right, any questions at this point? Is there a sponsor? No, just you, right? You're this, okay.
Yeah.
All right, great. We'll move to the public comment segment of the hearing. And those wishing to comment on the matter under consideration this evening are asked to complete the public hearing comment form that you will find at the back of the chambers and turn that in to Jennifer Kennedy. I will open the public hearing for public comment. Any comments? Okay. Seeing none, I will close it and send it to the council for a motion.
I'll move that we approve an ordinance vacating a municipal utility easement located at approximately 20 East Winchester Street.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right. Is there a discussion on the motion? All right. Brooke, would you take the roll?
Aye.
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 Aye. All right. That closes our public hearing portion. And now we go to the business items. And the first business item is consideration of a resolution authorizing and approving proceedings in eminent domain as necessary for a strip of land located at 5859 South Willow Grove Lane. GL Critchfield presenting.
Thank you.
Hi, GL.
Thanks. This agenda item comes back at your request from an August 4th meeting of last year where we talked about this a little bit. We talked about it in committee of the whole. This is, as you said, Chairwoman Turner, the resolution that would authorize the city to file an eminent domain action if necessary on a parcel of I think it's 106 square foot parcel on Willow Grove Lane. Originally, this came to the city with NeighborWorks wanting to do a subdivision in this area, and they had proposed a cul-de-sac, and we, as staff, asked that they consider extending Willow Grove Lane to meet up with Tripp Lane. They were told also that they would have to acquire this property, which is owned privately by the Livingstons, and they were unable to acquire the property, and so it's come back to the city to determine whether you want to have the potential to exercise eminent domain. We've gone through the process of trying to negotiate. We have an appraisal. The Livingstons also have gone to the ombudsman and received a second appraisal. And they're waiting this vote tonight to determine whether they will have a mediation with the city. This tonight, as you consider this, Livingstons will have an opportunity to speak to this as well. And so we've had the discussion earlier that Livingstons were present at with public safety and with city engineer. If you have any other questions, you can ask those now, or we can have Livingston speak.
Are there further questions or any questions for GL at this point?
I only have one. Who pays for the piece of property?
So that's something we would have to talk about with the developer, whether they would pay for it or whether the city would pay for it. We would expect some participation by the developer.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we have the Livingstons present. Would you like to speak to the council?
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to address the council. I'm Jim Livingston. There's my beautiful wife over there, Wendy, and I'll be talking on behalf of both of us. But the first thing I wanted to say is I really appreciate the council listening to what I have to say, but also for taking the time to read the comments that have come in from the neighborhood and those who, you know, feel one way or another about this situation. And, you know, there's a couple of different sides to this, but I think based on what we've heard in previous council meetings and that type of thing, I think you're getting the sense that there's a lot of support for not having a through street, an overwhelming amount of support to not have a through street. And there's some really good reasons for that. And my wife and I, you know, we're not just representing ourselves, we're representing the community around us. And, you know, you've received a lot of comments. I'll bet you can only imagine what we've received. And people really wanting us to, as well as us wanting to make sure that a through street doesn't go through. And there's some reasons for that. The thing that is very concerning in the comments that you've seen, and these are community members that are well educated. I mean, they're not dumb people by any stretch of the imagination. They're well educated. They've researched the issues, and you know, the thing that's concerning to me is there are three things that they're concerned about. One is safety, one is traffic, and one is the idea of using eminent domain to benefit a private developer, which I think, and I'll talk mostly about that last issue. But these people have done their research, and the thing that I'm concerned about is in all of the comments and the meetings that we've have watched and listened to, the Planning Commission never addresses the safety issue. They really don't. They haven't. What they have addressed, though, is a connectivity issue, and it's all about connectivity. In the committee of the whole prior to this meeting, you know, Mr. Stokes, he said that there are too many cul-de-sacs to count. Well, think about that for a minute. There are too many cul-de-sacs to count, and now you're going to open up this little tiny road. Can you imagine the traffic that's going to hit that road? So, you know, he said they're expecting 300 cars due to this extensive traffic study that was done. Well, there hasn't been a traffic study done on that street. And I think his estimate of 300 cars a day is way too low. By doing simple math, it's obvious it's way too low. And so that's a huge concern. But let me tell you what I see every day. What I see walking down that street every day are a whole lot of students, many, many students. I see their parents. I see families walking down that street And why do they walk down that street and go through that walkway? Because it's a safe place to walk. There are alternative paths that they can take, and they choose not to take those paths because it's safe for them to walk down that street. And I can't imagine a through street and what that would do to this community. So, I think that's something to really keep in mind, is the safety of these people and what the community is saying. I mean, you've seen the responses, and it's, again, overwhelming what people are asking for, and wanting to make sure that this remains a safe place for their families to walk. So that's something to keep in mind. It'd be a shame to see that taken away. A couple of other things. Let's see. I've got some additional notes that I took prior to in the prior meeting. But I want to talk about kind of the process that this has gone through. If you take a look at the original Planning Commission meeting on this on June 17th in 2004, and we do have the notes or the minutes from that meeting, and it clearly states in there that the stub road could remain a stub road because the property owner to the north may never sell. It was not a foregone conclusion that this would be a through street. It wasn't developed to be a through street originally. And so the assumption that this was always planned to be a through street is absolutely inaccurate. And that's something to please keep in mind as you make a decision on this. The other issue that came up is the issue of utilities. And there is room for the utilities. I think that was made clear in the meeting. The other thing too is my wife and I have no issue with an easement for utilities on our property. Absolutely none. We are more than happy to cooperate in any way to help facilitate that for the development of a cul-de-sac. So that's something that I don't want to be a concern. Let's see. Just a couple other points. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything here. There are a lot of things that I'm not covering because I don't want to talk for 2 hours here. Not that I would have that much time, but you've read the comments. I'm not going to try and cover the community's comments, but I do want to make one point on the community comments. We know where those comments have come from. And it's not just our little local neighborhood. It is across a very large area of Murray. So when the Planning Commission says this is to benefit the community, well, I think the community's spoken loud and clear. And it's not just our community, it is a broader community that absolutely does not want this to go through. The other item I want to talk about is eminent domain. Generally, eminent domain is used when there isn't a viable alternative. And in this case, there absolutely is a viable alternative. The original concept design plan that was submitted by NeighborWorks was for a cul-de-sac. It wasn't for a through street. The Planning Commission and city engineer both validated that it was a viable plan. So at one point in time, it was a viable plan, but now it's not for some reason. The city engineer asked NeighborWorks to submit a plan for a through street development. Later, the mayor's office asked NeighborWorks to submit a plan for a cul-de-sac development, which for whatever reason NeighborWorks did not do. But the point I'm trying to make is that a cul-de-sac is a viable option to solve this issue without having to take someone's property in order to benefit a private developer, which seems unreasonable and is something that I'm not sure the city would want to set that precedence. But these are the concerns that I have. And just wanted to make some additional points. But I do want to touch on one more thing, sorry. The code issues that were brought up in the meeting previous to this, that's been there for 17 years. And now all of a sudden there's concern over code issues. I think it was clear about the comments from the fire department that it's not a showstopper by any means. There is concern about safety, but it's not a showstopper. And, we have not had any issues in that area. We've had emergency vehicles come in. We've had all kinds of emergency vehicles come in without ever having an issue. We don't have an issue with garbage pickup or anything like that. It's worked just fine. So I think, please take these into consideration. Please take the comments that have come into you from the public into consideration, and just asking to please not condemn this property. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Livingston. I appreciate your comments. Okay, so do we now go to, do you have anything else that you want to add, GL?
I just want to explain, this is one of those cases that's a little more complicated than normal. If it weren't for this piece of ground that Livingston owned, we would require NAWRCS to put this road through, and we do that in most every development where we have a stub road. Is we do it for that purpose, so that in the future, when it develops, we can have the authority to require that. Sorry about that. Yeah. So this isn't like it's the first time we've done this. We do this in most developments where there is a stub road. The complicating factor is this small piece of ground that is privately owned, that obviously we can't do anything about unless we condemn it. So that's the reason for this condemnation action.
Okay. Thank you, GL. All right, I'll send it to the council for a motion.
Can I ask a question before, or discuss?
Well, I'll ask for discussion after the motion, if there is a motion. Okay, do we have a motion? No motion. Okay. Then it dies, and it does not pass since it dies. So anyway, okay. We will continue on to the mayor's report and questions.
Thank you. First off, I want to mention how great it was to be able to get back together as a community to celebrate Independence Day. And I want to express appreciation to all the employees of Murray City that worked hard to put together the Fun Days activities from early in the morning till late in the evening. And so we appreciate that. We had Parks and Recreation, Public Works, Police and Fire put in many long hours, and it was very successful. I'm also happy to report that the fire department did not receive any calls for fireworks-related fires over the weekend, which is remarkable.
It is.
So I express appreciation to the residents for being responsible in their use of fireworks. So we appreciate that. Just a reminder that the summer performances are underway now at the amphitheater, and Shrek, the musical, begins this Friday night, and should be fun. And tickets are available at the Parks and Recreation office. Also of note during this time of drought, that there are several Murray residents that are participating in the Flip Your Strip program to conserve water this summer. So as a reminder to the public, if you currently have lawn in your park strip and would like to replace it with water-wise landscaping, you can visit the water department page on the city's website to see eligibility and planting requirements. And residents can receive a rebate of $1.50 per square foot if they meet the requirements. So that's a good opportunity, particularly if someone is looking to switch to a water-wise solution. And of course, we continue to encourage the conservation of water during this drought time. So That's all I have to report this evening. I'll answer questions if you have questions.
Questions, comments for the mayor? Yes.
No, I have a comment, but not for the mayor.
Okay.
You're off the hook, Mayor. I wanted to point out that a few weeks ago we had a police-involved shooting in Murray, and one of our officers was wounded in that situation. People say he was lucky. He wasn't lucky. He got shot. He was fortunate that he wasn't hurt worse than he was. He responded to a call to help a woman, and in that process of saving her, he took a bullet himself. The news, I can't tell you how sick and tired I am of the news. The news talked about the shooting of the victim, but said an officer was injured. Couldn't even bring themselves to say the officer was shot. But these are what these men and women do every day for us. They get up, they put on their uniform, they go, and they take care of incidents that we can't handle ourselves. And I think we need to start showing them a lot more respect than they've been getting, because they do this every day, all day. They never get a call to come over and have coffee. They get a call to come over and save my life and put your life in danger in the process. I think if you see an officer in a restaurant or a cafe or any place, show them the respect they deserve, not the lack of respect they've been getting. Brett and I, don't make the mistake I made, though. Brett and I were in a restaurant a while back, and we walked in, and there were 2 unified officers there. So I told our server, why don't you bring me their check? Well, 5 more walked in after I said that. 3 more payments, it'll be taken care of, and Jan will let me back in the house. But it's worth every penny. Start showing these men and women the respect they deserve, because they risk their lives each and every day for us. And with that, and firefighters, the same thing. We had a fire in Murray. Firefighter was injured. The chief and I talked about it. I hate to say, fortunately, it wasn't ours. It was a unified firefighter, but they do the same thing. They risk their lives every day so that we can go home and feel comfortable. So think of that next time you see them. Do something to show your appreciation of these men and women that serve us in such a dangerous and selfless act. Thank you.
All right. Are there any?
I won't be as long, but I just wanted to thank Senator Reeby for joining us today for this meeting. So we have one of our state representatives. So thanks for joining us.
Senator Reeby, you snuck in. Do you want to say something quickly? All right. Well, thank you for joining us. All right. If there are no more comments from the council, Thank you. I appreciate your being here, and thank you to the audience. It's great to see you again. So anyway, take care, and we're adjourned.
Thank you.